Thanks, gentlemen. It's the Shaman coming at you, and today I want to talk to you about the power of vulnerability and what that can do for you to help you to be more social and more integrated. Also going to cover some other really cool topics about inner game that might be useful for your mindset so that you can put it together into a different kind of picture. So we just finished doing a number of trainings, and it was an amazing number of weeks, like having a lot of fun with the guys that we're working with. And it's something that I see a lot when guys come to this kind of work. They want to feel successful, they want to feel confident, they want to feel like they have choice and freedom in their lives. And there's often a very big emphasis on the results, on the mechanics, on trying to be confident, on trying to get the thing that they really want out of the process. And that's very understandable because, there is this desire to get the goal, to get the aim, to get to the point. And there's often this kind of focus of like, how can we get into a social interaction with a woman that we desire and then, get to the point where we're doing the magic and she feels the connection and everything's progressing and everything's sort of moving the way that you want. And once again, guys really love that idea. They really want to get to that point, and I get it. It's a very exciting idea. But there's something that's a little bit deeper that's really good and really important to understand, which is that underneath and inside of every single one of us, inside of you, inside of me, inside of the women out there that you're interacting with, is a sense of vulnerability, a sense of being, let's say, raw and somebody that is learning to deal with life. So on a basic level, our vulnerability is the core of our nature. It's the core of who we are. It's the core of what we have to deal with, because when we really be honest with ourselves, life is this kind of process of dealing with chaos and dealing with difficulty and our own fears and insecurities. And that includes, our external social sense of self, as well as our physical needs. So it's our emotional needs as well as our physical needs. So we've got to come to terms with this sense of vulnerability. Now, typically what happens is we have this vulnerability and then we try to avoid it in some way, shape, or form. Or we build a personality around the vulnerability that allows us to be able to cope in some ways. And that's kind of what our ego is. So from a very young age, when we're really starting to be a young child that's working out how the world works, we start to develop strategies to be able to cope with the world. And these strategies are basically, our personality types. It's how we learn to feel comfortable with ourselves, how we learn to feel comfortable with others. And it's also where we learn to deal with our life with what you could call, these different personality types. So the importance of understanding vulnerability is that if you can really come to terms with it, if you can come to peace with it, if you can learn to be with it, then it can start to help you to make better connections, both to yourself as well as those around you. Now, the tendency for a lot of people is they live in the kind of superficial level of what you could call, the ego. So the ego is really the personality that arises out of the needs to cope with vulnerability. And that egoic sense is really, it's a strategy, it's a structure that can help you to cope with the world. But it only works as long as it's healthy. It only works as long as it's adaptive. It only works as long as it's really like helping you to get your results. So what often happens is that because we avoid vulnerability and we want to cover our vulnerability up with our ego strategies, with our personality, then we tend to kind of hide this deeper part of us, which actually stops us from being more transparent. It stops us from being more authentic. It stops us from being real about our human nature and our ability to connect. Now, that does affect your social interactions, because if you're not able to come into contact with your vulnerability first and to come to peace with that, and instead you're trying to avoid that, you're trying to resist it, you're trying to get away from that, then that creates a lot of inner tension. So I would say that one of the reasons why guys often feel a lot of fear, a lot of resistance, a lot of doubt, a lot of hesitation and anxiety around approaching or around being social is because they're afraid that their vulnerability is going to be seen and that something bad's going to happen to them. They're going to experience social judgment, they're going to experience ridicule, humiliation, fear, some kind of negative consequence. And then that kind of creates this insecurity, because that often reminds us of something earlier in our nature, earlier in our development that we were trying to protect ourselves from. And if you're like many people out there which had some kind of uncomfortable childhood conditions where there was, neglect or negligence or some kind of negativity that was around in the situation, then it can be very triggering to have to face that kind of vulnerability. Now, this is where, understanding techniques and technologies of self-awareness and resourcing yourself through, being present and being positive and working with your beliefs and working with your states and working with these inner game technologies can really help you to change the game, can really help you to change the way that you feel about yourself and start to update some of these, let's say, personality structures that weren't so useful moving forward. They're more of an old way of doing things. So what's also needed is to move forward with a healthy sense of an adult self, a healthy, strong personality that can cope with the world in a healthy kind of way. Because I see so much drama gets created, both in men and women, as a result of them not being able to deal with the reality of their own tenderness, the reality of their own vulnerability. So learning to work with the breath, learning to work with focus, learning to work with your belief is something that can really help you to strengthen that process. So once again, this is where inner game stuff really comes in. So learning to change your mindsets. And what types of mindsets can help you to do that? Well, one type of mindset is to recognize that you are becoming whole and complete, that you are already whole and you're complete. You are already whole and perfect. And to learn to work with that in a way that can integrate you basically into a sense of everything being okay, giving yourself permission to move forward. Because as you're doing this work of, let's say, developing social skills, developing a social life, moving towards your goals, then you're gonna start to face your vulnerabilities. You're gonna start to face your own insecurities about yourself and where you're going and what's true for you. And what I would say is that is a step in the right direction, because it starts to show you where the blind spots are. It starts to show you where you need to do the work, where the resources are missing, where the maladaptive strategies are, where the old personality structures need help to be able to be upgraded. And then, yet again, with awareness, with breath, with embodiment, with intent, then you can start to work on changing these things step by step. And the beautiful thing about going out into the world and choosing to be a social man and choosing to interact and choosing to be somebody that's changing your life for the better is it's like a very integrated form of self-development. It's an amazing therapeutic process that can really help you. So really acknowledge that vulnerability inside yourself, work with it with others. And what that means is when you approach women too, recognize that they're feeling vulnerable, that they have their own vulnerabilities and they have their own personality types, whether that be she's trying to be, high status, or she's shy, or she doesn't know how to deal with the kind of approach that you're bringing at that time. Maybe that will help you to be able to accommodate the reaction out of the situation and also to be able to be more at ease with yourself and with the environment around you. So I want you to think about that. What is vulnerability for you? And how can you start to be mature and caring and supportive to your own vulnerability? Another thing that I teach guys very often on the workshop is getting into states where you can really, first of all, feel the vulnerability and then take care of it. To be a resourceful adult, to be a healthy version of yourself, taking care of this vulnerable aspect of yourself. And like I said, sometimes it's breathing, simple but easy technique to use, or sometimes it's learning to feel inside the body and give yourself permission to feel better. Sometimes it's also a matter of learning to track the story. So I feel vulnerable, but what's the real story here? Well, I feel vulnerable because I feel like I'm going to be abandoned or people are going to judge me. And then is there an underlying history beneath that? Most of the time there is. There's a history of negativity in the family, or negativity in school, or negativity in socialization, or negativity in past relationships. So being able to see those things, come to terms with them, to be able to give new insights, new beliefs, new positive feelings to them, and to take care of them as if you are now a healthy adult, you are a mature version of yourself, dealing with, upgrading, supporting yourself through that vulnerability to be stronger it's a huge game changer. And ultimately, it's about self-love, self-worth, self-acceptance, starting to build a sense of identity and reality inside yourself where you can believe and you can feel that you are integrated in a way that is allowing you to be safe in your vulnerability, to get your needs fulfilled, to be a healthy adult, as well as somebody's connected to your playful side, your expressive side, your childish innocence again. And when you can put all that together, then that's going to give you a completely different sense of self moving forward and give you a lot more permission to really go for what you want in your life. So there's something to think about, gentlemen. I hope that gets you going. I hope you feel good about that. If you've got any other questions or if you want to know more about inner game, hit me up. I am available, and this is exactly what I specialize in do. So guys often come to me to work on traumas, difficulties, limiting beliefs, fears of vulnerabilities, doubts, insecurities, problems that they've had in their past. And I do one-on-one amazing sessions with people, and we get great results, insights, transformation that can really help them to move forward effectively. So this is the Shaman saying peace out. Thank you for watching, and I hope this is useful.